Hi, everybody. Welcome to Woo Woo Wednesday. Today, when I was getting ready to record today's little chat, I was having a little trouble. I asked the guides to come in and said, what do we want to talk about today? And really wasn't getting anything. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes that happens, and that's when I go to the cards. So I decided, okay, well, I'm going to draw a card, and whatever card I draw, that's what I'm going to talk about today. Okay. So guess what card I drew? I drew the death card. Now, so let's talk about death a little bit. Death is in the tarot not just death of the physical body. So a lot of people, when they get the death card in a reading, people that are not really familiar with the tarot will have a tendency to think, oh my gosh, somebody's going to die. And that's not always the case. Death is about transformation. It's about transformation. It's about moving from one expression of living your life as a soul to another expression. And so we go through our lives and we have many periods of death. We have many periods when we are releasing things that are no longer life to us and moving on to something else. So if you end a relationship, that could be considered a death. You're dying to a specific way of living your life in relationship to this one person and going on to a new expression of your soul. If you change careers, that could be considered a death. Years ago, when I kind of evolved from my former belief system, that was a tremendous death because I didn't know who I was without that belief system, and I had to completely reinvent myself. So I remember when my dad died, had a dream. I guess it was about, I don't know, a week or two after he died. And in the dream, I was driving a car and he was in the passenger seat. And we came up to a convenience store and he got out of the car and he was real excited to be going shopping. My dad loved to shop. And so he waved goodbye and he went into the store. And I woke up. And so when I was thinking about the dream, in the dream, I thought, well, that's kind of what's happened. Dad, now I kind of helped usher him to the next expression of his soul, and he's excited about it. And so it was a completely different dream with my mother. After my mother died, I had a dream, and I dreamed I was at a party, and there was lots of, it was, back in those days when you'd go to parties and the air was thick with smoke. Everybody was smoking, everybody was drinking, partying. That's not the sort of place I would have expected to find my mother. She was very religious. She was very Christian. She probably maybe drank alcohol once or twice in her life that I know of. And she never smoked. I don't think she did any of those things. When we were kids, we didn't even go to Disney movies. We didn't do anything. We didn't go to fairs. We were very of a strict religious family. So that was the last place I would have expected to find my mother. So my mother died of cancer. And, while she was alive, she probably died a little bit younger than what she would have liked. She was barely 70, I think. And so when she died, it was a very painful form of cancer. And she had prayed for years and years and years, asking God to heal her. And, she died. So in this dream, and I'm finding her in this place and I found her, and she had a drink in her hand and a cigarette, a drink in one hand and a cigarette in the other hand. And so I'm like incredulous. And I said, Mom, what are you doing here? And she says, in my life, I did everything right and I died anyway. And so I'm comparing the two. Like when my mom died, she was kind of mad. She was mad. She did everything right and she died anyway. My dad, when he died, on the other hand, he was excited. He was like, "Yep, I'm done. I'm ready to go on to the next thing. I'm really happy." And so that's kind of how it goes. I have these two examples of when people go, and I'm sure that my mom, she's fine on the other side, and she was a wonderful woman. But I think, the sickness took its toll on her and probably created this unresolved business. And so in our life, when we go through a sort of death, we can go through it with the idea that okay, well, I don't have all the answers. I don't know if I did everything right. I did the best that I could. And now I'm going into the next expression of my soul, which is kind of what my dad did. You know, he had a lot of stuff too, but he went into the next expression of his life with anticipation and excitement, whereas, you know, I didn't feel like my mom really did. And so we do that in life. Say, for example, we end a relationship or somebody ends it for us. And so usually the person that ends the relationship ends up being better sooner than the person who gets left. The person who gets left has all this resentment and, you know, hurt, anguish, all of these, you know, hurt feelings. And the person who ends it is like, I'm kind of done. I'm ready to go on to the next thing. And so we have a choice in our life. That's a death. That would have been a death for both people, the person who left and the person who got left. And both people have this opportunity to kind of resolve the things in their life that weren't working and move on to the next expression of their soul. And so, that being said, we go through many deaths during our life. And then when we pass from this life to the next, we go through a death process. And so the most important thing to do is whenever you go through a transition of any kind, to make sure, you know, my shaman teacher told me, whenever you go through this death process, make sure that you let those things die a good death. In other words, embrace the hurt, embrace the pain, and then resolve it and move on. Because whatever is unresolved, those things become like cancers in our soul. And if we have passed from this life to the next, then there's that unfinished business, then our families suffer and our souls have a little trouble moving on to the next thing. And so it's really important whenever we go through these little mini deaths during our life, whether it's the end of a relationship, the end of a job, the end of, you know, even living in a certain location and moving on to the next location. There's so many things that we could say is like a death. Whenever we go through those things, it's really important to look at our lives and say, okay, well, this is a little painful, but I'm going to go on to the next thing with joy and anticipation rather than with resentment. I'm going to go into the next expression of my soul and believe that even if I'm hurt by this death, even if I'm sad by it, even if I'm lonely, even if things didn't work out the way I would have liked them to, I'm going to allow that thing to really die a good death and move on to the next thing that life has to offer me. So I really want that for you guys today. If you're going through a difficult experience, if you're going through kind of a death experience, really allow yourself to feel your feelings, allow yourself to grieve the loss, and then pick yourself up and move on to the next expression of your soul. And you'll be really glad you did. When you come to the end of your life, then you'll be able to say, I lived my life, and yes, there were things that turned out differently from what I would have liked, but I'm okay with it. I've found closure, and I went on and I moved on, and I was able to live the rest of my life after this death process, and I was able to move forward. So I really want to encourage you guys today to really think about those things and really think about really allowing things to move through you and move out of your bodies and out of your minds and your emotions and really move on to the next thing. Let's move forward. Okay? You all have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.